Okay, so thanks guys for joining, and in this session we'll discuss about the point-to-site networking option. In the previous session we discussed about the site-to-site networking, where we have multiple sites. It could be cloud sites, or it could be one on-premise and one Azure. So it could be a combination of anything. So you can easily network or connect multiple sites using the Azure Virtual Network Gateway. So we have seen one combination where we actually created one network in US data center and one in Southeast Asia data center, and we were able to network, and the machines were connecting with the private IP. So that's pretty much in a site-to-site scenario. So in today's scenario, what we'll see is how to do a point-to-site scenario. In point-to-site, when I mean the regular VPN things that we see, the Cisco VPN or whatever VPNs that we use every day, right? When you're working from home. So what if you have a network in Azure, and your employees or yourself want to connect from comfort of your home? How do you connect to your Azure network, right? So that's pretty much in the point to site, right? So in point to site, you don't need any extra device. The same VPN gateway which is dealing site to site connections, right? Let's say your office is in Hyderabad and you have a gateway called as HYD gateway. So you can use the same gateway for providing site to site connectivity, or sorry, the point to site connectivity, right? So what I do is I'll go in to the gateway which I created for my Hyderabad network. I said the name is HYD gateway. So if I had to do site to site networking, I went to connections and I added, let's say, another on-premise network, or another Azure network. I did the site to site here. For point to site configuration, there is the option here. You can see just below the connections blade, it is point to site configuration, right? So in this you just say configure now, and here it asks us to give us the address pool. So this address pool is different from your VNet address pool. So this needs to be given for the incoming connections. Let's say whoever is dialing in with your point to site connector, right? So he will get the IP from this pool. You can give any valid range. You can give 192.168, or you can give 10 dot series. You can give any class A, class B, or class C. So I said we support up to 128 concurrent connections, right? So you can have only up to 128 concurrent connections. That means at any given point of time, only 128 point to site users will be able to connect to the network. So that's the limitation as of now, but in future it might be increased for more users. We don't know, right? So let's say if I give something like this, so 256 IP addresses will be available in my pool for the clients, but practically only 128 will be in use, because the gateway limitation is we support only 128. So this is the first setting that we do, that is defining an address pool. So this can be any address range. It could be 10.0 series, or 172 or 192 series, right? It can be anything. And the second most important thing that we need to configure is the certificate. So this is the authentication mechanism for the connection. So our VPN gateway solution is based on the certificate based authentication. So it doesn't ask for a login ID or password, because this is not integrated with the AD. This is not this doesn't support the user ID or password based authentication. It supports only certificate based authentication. Okay, so for this purpose we need to upload one certificate, right? So how do we generate a certificate? The easiest way to do it is through the PowerShell, right? So in your company you may have different mechanism for generating certificate. PowerShell is the easiest or quick way for doing it, and this will give you a self-signed certificate. So when I say self-signed, it is valid only on this computer. But if you are working on an enterprise solution, you will ideally be getting the root certificates from a third-party certificate provider like Symantec or Verizon, right? So these are the third-party certificate authorities which will give you the certificate. So you need to buy a certificate from them, right? So for our testing purpose, we don't have to go to third-party and buy it. You can practice using a self-signed certificate. So the command for creating a certificate is new self-signed certificate. So this is the command which generates one certificate for you. So there are two things that you need to give. One is a name. I will say I give some name for my certificate, and I need to give a location. So the path which I give is the store on my local user. So in the current user store under personal, it will create one certificate. So don't worry about the command, it is there in the slide also. So what I am doing here is I am generating one certificate with name called Kiran, and that certificate will be placed in this store. Okay, so I'll show you how to get it from there. So I say enter. Okay, now one certificate is generated with this thumbprint and it is stored in this certificate store. So what do? You need to open the certificate manager console of Windows. So this is the certificate manager console in Windows. You go to personal and go to certificates. You see one certificate is created with name test Kiran, right? This is what we gave, and since we didn't give any expiration time, the default is 1 year. So this is valid up to 1 year. So what do? Just right click on it, go to all tasks and say export. Say next, and you don't need to export the private key. Select base 64 encoding. This is important. If you export it with the first option, it will not work in Azure. You need to use the base 64 encoding and give a name. Let's say I give test as a name and I'm saving it on the desktop. I say okay. Now my certificate is exported. Okay, so this is the file I need. So I just right click on it and say open with Notepad. You can see this, right? So if I open in Notepad, I see a big ASCII encoded string, right? This is the big ASCII encoded string which I need to copy to the Azure portal. So in earlier cases, in the classic mode, right, in the old, or let's say 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we used to simply upload this test.cer file in the Azure portal. But now what Microsoft asked is just give us this big string. That is good enough. So just right click on the certificate, open in Notepad, and you will see this. Just copy the string between begin certificate and end certificate. That is you don't have to copy that. It's the header and footer kind of thing. Okay, just copy the thing in between. Go back to your Azure portal. You can say certificate 1 or something. Just give any name, and this is where you paste that string. Public certificate data, right? So you paste that string that you copied and say save. Okay, the two things that we did is, one, we gave one address pool. Second, we gave the certificate data. That is whatever we exported from the certificate manager, we opened a Notepad and we got this big string, right? So this is the only two settings that you need to do on the gateway side, right? So this is the only thing that you need to do. So once your settings are saved, right, you will get a link here. This link will get highlighted, or rather activated. The download VPN client link will get activated. Okay, so I'm just waiting for that to get saved. So once this is saved, this link will get activated and we need to download and install it on all the computers that want to connect to this particular network, right? So now I have the button. I clicked. Okay, so it downloaded a zip file. You can see this, right, in my downloads folder. So let me unzip. Okay, so you need to install depending on the computer type. If it's a 32-bit computer, install this. If it's a 64-bit computer, install this. So I just right click on it and say run as admin, and this is not digitally signed, so you will see this problem. Just say run anyways. And one more thing I need to do is I need to disable my antivirus also for a few minutes, because my antivirus doesn't allow files which are not digitally signed. So I know what I am doing, so I will run it anyways. Okay, now I get this option. It says it copied few files and it closed away, right? So this is all you need to do on the client side. So if you are running this installation on a different computer than where you generated the certificate, so you need to give this certificate as well. So let's say you are installing or you want to connect from a different PC where this certificate is not there, right? Test current certificate is not there. You need to copy this certificate and run it there also. That means you just say install certificate, go say next, next, and say finish. So you need to install this certificate also on a different computer. Since I'm connecting from my same computer, I don't need to reinstall the certificate, right? So two things that you need on the client side. One is your VPN client page which you downloaded, and the second thing is the certificate. Okay, so now if I go to my, you can see a new connection is created and say connect, you will get a dialog box something like this, right? Just say connect. Okay, on new operating systems, Windows 8.1 and Windows 10, or even Windows 8 also may show this problem. You see that a certificate could not be found. It says that certificate was not found. The problem is, since our installer that we downloaded, right, was not digitally signed, so the connection which was created by the installer is not being trusted by Windows. That means this connection is not being trusted by Windows. So one way to get around this problem is you go to the network and internet settings, go to VPN option, go to advanced options, go to edit. You see this big server name here. So this is your gateway endpoint address. So just copy this gateway endpoint address, right? Copy this gateway endpoint address and say add VPN connection and give a name. Let's say you want to call it my network or something, and put that server name whatever you copied from there, right? And VPN type, you can say SSTP, it uses that protocol. So sign in, select certificate option and say save. Now instead of HYD office network connection, you can remove it. You simply use my network. Now it will ask for the certificate. Just select and say OK. Now if I say OK, my machine will be joining the Azure network. So the problem now is, I won't say problem, but in my Azure network there is no internet connection. So if I say OK now, we will be disconnected. That means my system will get disconnected because the remote network doesn't offer any internet connection. So there is no proxy server or something which offers me an internet connection there, so we will lose it, right? So this is one way to get around that. So you can try this once you want to do a hands-on, you can try that, right? So just need to click on OK and my machine will join the Azure network. And if I do IP config, right, I will get an IP address from the range that I assigned. So right now my Linksys router also gave me 192.168.1.6, but I will also get another IP address in one of the adapters here. It will show as Azure network gateway and it will give me 192.168.0.4, right? It will give me that address, and if you are connecting one more on that machine, you will get 0.5, so on and so forth, right? So the only two things that you need to do on every client machine is you need to install the VPN client package, or you can simply take this endpoint name and create connection directly by going into the internet settings. Right? It's directly by going into the internet setting, go to VPN, say add VPN connection, and simply put the server name and complete this setup, and also install the certificate that we generated. Okay, so I'll pause here for any questions. Any questions so far?
No, Kiran, no questions as of now.
Okay, so the setup looks really simple because you have only two things that you define on the gateway side, that is the certificate data and the address pool, and two things that you do on the client side, that is installing the VPN gateway client and then installing the certificate. That's all you need to do, right? Okay, now there is one problem right way visible. Okay, now you are giving this root certificate to, let's say, 100 people in your company, and let's say one of them has left the company, right? One of them has left the company, but he still has your certificate and he still knows your gateway endpoint address, right? So he can potentially connect whenever he wants, right? He has all the power to connect. So what you will do in that case is you are forced to change the root certificate every time, right? So if you change the root certificate, you have to install the new certificate on all the other 99 people's computer, right? So that's a very big problem. We should not be in that case. What we need to do is, instead of sharing the root certificate to the client computers, what you need to do is you need to generate something called as a child certificate. That means you should never share the certificate that you actually uploaded on the Azure portal, right? So how do you generate child certificate? You can generate it in two simple steps from PowerShell. That means you first generate the root certificate, you have it, upload it to Azure portal, you're done. Upload it to Azure portal, you're done. Next, when somebody approaches you for a VPN connection, that means he wants VPN connection to the network that you've created, what you need to do is, instead of giving the certificate which you created for the Azure portal, you need to create a certificate for him alone. That means there is something you need to do, is called as a child certificate or a client certificate. So how do you create a client certificate? You need to use the same self-signed certificate command, right? The same self-signed certificate command. So there is an option called signer. So in signer, you will give the root certificate name as the signer. That means the certificate which is being generated now will have all the power of the root certificate, but it will be treated like a new certificate. So what is that you need to do is, when somebody is leaving the company, you need to get the certificate ID which he has and put that ID here. For example, let me generate one certificate. So the commands are there in this PPT, you don't worry about that. Okay. So what I will do is, first I will store the details of my root certificate in one variable. Okay, so I'll take, so if I run this command, my root certificate will be stored in this variable called $CERT. Now what I need to do is, I need to run the command which I mentioned in the PPT. Okay, so what I'm doing is, Okay, so I'm generating one more certificate with the name child cert, right? And signer I gave as $cert. That means $cert is my root certificate. So whichever certificate that I'm generating, let instead of child cert, you can give the employee ID number of that guy. Okay, to remember which certificate you gave to whom. Okay, I say enter. Now a new certificate is generated with this name 368509. Let's assume this is one uh, ID number of that employee. Okay, and this is the new certificate generated for him. So if you go to the certificate store, you will have a new certificate, right? This is the certificate we have. So export this certificate, and give it to that person. Let's say I will call it as, okay, I have this certificate. Now give it to the respective person. He will install in his computer and his VPN will work. But when this guy is leaving, one step that you need to do is go to your management portal, go to details, and it has something called as a thumbprint, right? This is the big ID. You also see that in the PowerShell, right? The same thumbprint. So copy this thumbprint, go to Azure portal, put the thumbprint in revoked certificates, this thing, just mention the name of the certificate and also the thumbprint. Now if you save this, whoever has this certificate, right, he will no longer be able to connect to the gateway. That means you are blacklisting this particular certificate. So as an admin, one extra step that you need to do is you need to maintain the list of certificates that you issued. So let's say another guy is coming to you for requesting one more certificate. What you have to do, you run one more PowerShell command for generating a new certificate, right? This time I will call him, I will give it to 370.152 employee. Okay, now I will run this command. I have one more certificate, right? Now if I go to certificate store, I will have one more certificate, so I will give it to the respective person. Now on my computer or somewhere in my repository where the administrators has access, they need to maintain the list of certificates and their thumbprints, right? This thumbprint issued to this guy, this thumbprint issued to this guy. So you need to maintain this list. If you don't maintain, then you will not be able to blacklist that particular certificate on the gateway side, right? So that is one way of preventing misuse when a guy is leaving the company, or once he is done with the project, you don't want him to access the gateway or access the network remotely any longer. So this is one way of preventing that, right? Okay, so this is one thing. So if I say save the certificate which I mentioned here, right, this certificate, whoever has it will no longer be able to connect to my HYD network, right? So that's how it is. Okay, so point to site, once you are connected, right, once you are connected using this connection, if you go to my network and say connect, and once you are connected sorry, so once you are connected, you will be able to access your VMs and other resources through the private IPs. I mean, from your computer you don't need to use the public IP anymore. That means you can directly connect to the VMs using the 10.0 IP that you have for the VM, right? You will no longer need the public IP because your computer is part of that particular network, right? That's one thing. And what else is remaining? Okay, so there was one more concept that I wanted to touch upon is express route. So when you go to your network gateway, you see an option here, right? VPN and express route. So express route is a is like a private connection between your site and the Azure data center. So if you select express route, you will need to hire a service provider. That means you need to select a service provider as well. That means there are several service providers in India. So you can choose Airtel, you can choose Tata Networks, or you can choose many others actually. So how do you create an express route connection? So you just go to, you need to select the provider, you need to select the peering location, select the bandwidth. So this you need to buy separately from them. That means if you're opting for express route, you're asking for a lease line between Azure data center and your network. So why do you need this is when you want the connections to be faster. That means your local network and Azure network, right? So if you want a dedicated link because you want a speed access, that means your storage resources or your network resources, whatever you have in Azure, and your network, it will be fast or even faster if you use express route, because you are creating a dedicated bandwidth link between your data center and your Azure data center. So this is a paid service. You need to pay the respective provider. That means Airtel or Tata Communications, whoever is offering it in India. For now, I think these are the two guys who are offering. I think even Reliance is also offering. So you need to find out with them, and then you need to go with that, right? So that is one thing that you need to do. So if you have created the express route, you can use it with your gateway. That's one thing. And there is one more option called active mode, right? So this will not be available if you go with basic type of SKU, right? SKU, I said, is like a package, right? So if you go with high performance SKU, you will have this option enabled. What is this option? Active mode. So your Azure network gateway, right? So let's see this scenario. We have one on-premise site and you have one Azure network. So you created a gateway and you have one router in your on-premise, and both are connected. Now if there is any problem or maintenance on the Azure network side, so there is a standby gateway available to you automatically. I mean, you don't have to create another instance of the gateway which is available, just like your the storage backup. You will have another standby instance of the network gateway always available to you, and the minimum uptime, or rather the failover time that Microsoft guarantees is within 10 to 15 seconds it will actually fail over to the standby instance, right? So now if you don't want it to be in that way, that means you want always an active connection available to you, you need to create an active mode. In this you will get two IP configurations, right? So first one will be pointing to the first instance of the gateway, second one will be pointing to the second instance of the gateway, something like this. So you will have gateway 1 and gateway 2. So there will be two IP addresses which you will configure on your router. That means if gateway 1 is not responding, your router will connect to gateway 2. So as if you are creating two redundant gateways, right? So that is called active mode. So if you select active mode, you will get two IP configurations, and you need to configure that on your router, right? So if you don't select active configuration, you will have to live with this failover time. That means for planned maintenance they give an uptime of about 10 to 15 seconds. That means it will take about 10 to 15 seconds in case of planned maintenance. But in case of unplanned maintenance, that means a network switch going down or something happening, it will take about more than a minute. That's what they say, minute or minute and a half. So if you think that this 1 minute is also something that you cannot afford, you better go with active mode, which will help you be available always. So it is for high availability of the network gateway, right? That's one thing. Okay, so now let's see if there are any other scenarios that we need to do. Let's go back to my gateway. I go to connections, and let's say you have both networks in the same subscription, right? So let's say you have one network in East US, one network in South India, and both you have created in the same subscription. You will be able to click on add, select first gateway, select second gateway, and you'll be able to do, right? But what if you know these two are in different subscriptions, right? Let's say you acquired a company, that company is also on Azure, but their network is in their subscription, your network is in your subscription. In that case, you will not be able to browse the gateway, through the portal, right? You will not be able to browse that company's gateway from here, right? It will simply not work. So for that case, what you need to do is you need to do that piece from the PowerShell, right? You need to do that piece of thing from the PowerShell. So normally I give this as an assignment actually. So one person creates one VNet and one gateway in his subscription. Another person creates another VNet and another gateway in his subscription. Now both of them have to do the networking, right? So how do they do it? It is rather really simple. So you need to run a few commands in your PowerShell at both sides. That means you have to run it and the other person also has to run it. How do you do that is, so first log in to your subscription, log into your Azure subscription using this command, login Azure RM account, and then there is a command called I will say my gateway or something. So this is my variable where I want to store my gateway details. I will say my gateway equals, and the command name is get Azure RM virtual network gateway, right? I will say get Azure RM virtual network gateway. I give name. I need to give my gateway name. What is the name of my gateway? HYD GW, right? I need to give that HYD GW. And another thing I need to give is my resource group name. The resource group name where I created this, I created that in demo resource group. I need to give that as well. So these are the two things that you need to give, and say enter. So what this PowerShell command will do is it will get the details of HYD gateway and store in this variable called $myGateway. So let me see what that variable has. Okay, I'll simply press enter. You see this? It has all the details of your gateway. It has what is the root certificate that you're using, right? What is the address pool that you're using, right? What is the subscription data and everything. So it has all the details of your gateway. So one thing that you need to exchange with the other party is this ID, right? So what you need to do is you simply say $mygateway.id. Just run this and copy this string. Copy this string, send it to the other person. You want to email it or you want to directly exchange it. So it's up to you how do you want to do it. So this is all the information that he needs, right? Okay. Now what the other person has to do is he also has to run this command. This command, get Azure RM virtual network gateway. He has to put his gateway name and everything, and he has to share the output. something like this, my gateway.id. He has to share his output to you, right? Now what you need to do is, let's assume you have his output with you. So let's call this is your output with your hand. What you need to do is, you need to run this command. So we need to create a new object. So I will say dollar remote network equal to something like this, and then what I will do is okay, now what I'll do is I will assign dot name equals let's say your friend gave you US Office details, right? Give US Office as the name of that remote network. That means you need to give the name of the remote gateway. Let's say if your friend gave you this gateway name, let's say US Office gateway, give that in this, and then give the ID, let's say ID, and paste the ID that you received from your friend. Let's say this is the ID which you received from your friend, put it here. So now your remote gateway details are stored in this variable, right? Now you need to run the next command, that is new Azure RM virtual network connection. So this is the command which creates the connection. Okay, give a name, let's say I will call it HYD to US or something. Okay, and I give the resource group name, I'll give as demo, and virtual network gateway 1 I'll give as dollar my gateway. Okay, and virtual network gateway 2 I'll give as dollar remote gateway. Okay, and the authorization key, let's say I enter Kiran123. Okay, now this is what I need to enter. Okay, and I say location I will say connection type is also required, so we need to enter VNet to VNet. So now this will create one connection, right? So if you go to your HYD gateway, you will see one connection appear here. Okay, so it says virtual network gateway cannot be null. It is because we gave the same connection string for both, right? If I have given the proper gateway address here, it would have been succeeded. That means if you really have a remote gateway ID, if you have given it, it would have been succeeded. So one thing that you need to remember is this set of commands should be run on both sides. That means you have to run it and your friend also have to run it, right? So once if both have run, you will see two connections here, right? So I said creating a VNet to VNet is like a handshake, right? Two-way handshake. So we'll have one connection from gateway A to B, one connection from gateway B to A. Only then you will have a trust relationship, right? So once both parties have run it properly, you will have a working connection between both gateways, right? So this is how you do it when you are working with different subscriptions, right? Okay, I'll stop it here. Any questions?